Let's try that again. All right, hello friends. Thank you for joining me again today. My name's Dan, and this is Daily Art Adventure number 579. Final portrait corrections on last Saturday's wedding portrait. Now, just to give you some idea, all the rest of the painting is not even anywhere close to finished. But as you know, about 100 times more energy goes into those tiny square inches than all the rest of the painting put together. I will take a moment to boast, celebrate, say yahoo. I have finished with Aaron, and I'm going to pick you guys up. Forgive me the earthquake ride for just a second. I want to bring you in real close just so you can see my finished masterpiece of Erin. I'll put her photograph about the same size. There we go. All right. I'm pretty happy with that. Actually, I'm looking now at my monitor, saying, am I seeing discrepancies there? Might be. The bottom half of her face should be slightly longer. That would be troubling, because I think I'm done. Is it her chin? It might be. How about that? I thought it was all done, and then when I'm looking at it, I've got two things in question right now. I think it's called the philbin, the distance between her nose and her top lip, should that be slightly longer? And should her chin be slightly longer? I think the answer is yes. Doggone it. I thought I was all done with her. So even while I'm showing you, I'm going, All right, so there you go. Welcome to the life of portraiture. Every time you look at it, you see something. Oh boy. All right, so forgive me here for a second. Let me move my camera around. There's my messy studio, complete with children's work, play space. All right, now, however, I am going to focus on... Yeah, hang on. I'm still looking at her. That was a very disconcerting moment there. For some... Now, I will explain what caused that was the distance. When I was showing you and looking at my monitor, it set me back in the room, and from a distance, I saw things that I had missed up close. Anyway, that's a lovely face, that's for sure. But now it's time to work on Brent. So he's behind her. That is to say, in the process, she's one step ahead of him. And here again, you regulars, you've seen this all before. For you new people, I take a photograph with this backup camera, backup phone. I take a photograph of the painting. Then in a collage application, I put those two side by side. That helps. Then in my photo application on my phone, I flop this. So this is a mirror image of that. Why a mirror image? Because you can see your mistakes better. Because after you've been working, you become blind to the issues, the mistakes. So every beginner portrait painter out there, my goodness, you need to understand the importance of looking at your work in a mirror. And this is simply a high-tech version of the mirror. I do it on my phone instead of a literal mirror. If I don't have a phone, I use a mirror. So, photograph of each, photograph of my painting, photograph of him, mirror image. And then, because I can see my mistakes here, what you see here is all my blue pencil. I just start anywhere and say, okay, number one. And in this one, I came up with 15 modifications, 15 changes that need to be made to my painting. And then, because it's virtually impossible to go from this to my painting, then I transfer all 15 changes. It's just a matter of sit on your butt and do it. That's all. It just takes a little while. Portraits take a while. So I switch them all the modifications, and then now I'm going to work from here to here. Does that make sense? And even though this is a fine looking face, it doesn't quite look like Brent. Now, let me be really specific. Everybody could tell who it was. In fact, as bad as it was on Saturday night, some of his friends came up to me and said, "Ooh, boy, you really nailed Brent." Okay, so thankfully, most people are not that visually astute. So they're being nice. Plus, maybe they've drunk a little too much. I'm just saying, right, at a reception. They go, "Oh, man, that looks just like him." And partly they're just being nice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, be that as it may, it didn't look exactly, but it was close enough people could tell. It was close enough you could tell who it was. Right now, it's way closer than it was on Saturday, and you can certainly tell who it is. But it's not quite perfect. It's got those something, you look at it and you go, yeah, I could tell who it is, but something's not quite right. Well, that's what I'm here to fix. All right? So, and every time, of course, every time an artist looks at it, like you just saw me do with her, which I'm quite dismayed about, because her mouth is to die for here. Her mouth is beautiful and a good representation of her mouth. But now I'm a little concerned it might be a little high, and I need to move the whole thing down. If that's true, I don't have the psychological energy to do it right now. I'm just telling you, okay? Now, just adding a little bit to her chin, that's easy. In fact, I've already done that twice, if not 3 times. That's easy. But if her whole mouth needs to come down, well, all right. I have all my changes numbered here. And the first change that I'm going to do is actually not what's written here. Here I say his mouth needs to be lowered. And that needs to happen. But before I even do that, and this is not marked here, I'm just looking with fresh eyes. Before I even do that, see, the lower part of his face is too short. Same thing with her. That's ironic that in both cases I've got the bottom half of their face crunched a little bit. So I need to lengthen the lower part of his face. Which coincidentally, by the way, there were some comments, there was some discussion between us, me and you, on Saturday night about whether their heads were too small compared to their bodies. And indeed they are. I have heroicized their proportions. Now, she was fairly tall. I think I'm 5'9.5", and I don't know what kind of shoes she had on, but she was every bit as tall as me, which is tall for a woman. So she's already kind of in an elegant shape. He was very average height, like myself. So I always stretch out. I mean, and I think most portrait artists do this, but there's a real fine line between stretching and stretching too much. And it was possible that the way they were the other night, I had them stretched too much. The good news is that over the last 2 days, as I finished their faces have grown slightly. So their faces have grown into their bodies, and I'm now quite comfortable with this proportion. Again, I call it heroicized. An average real human is 7.5 heads tall, but a model, like we see in the magazine, newspaper, TV, is 8 heads tall, sometimes even slightly more. And then a fashion illustration, which is basically a dying, dead art. But, you know, fashion illustrators used to make their models 9 heads tall, 9.5 heads tall, and so on and so forth. So that's a more heroic proportions. And people, frankly, sort of expect that to some degree, I think, or they have the right to expect that. You don't want them literal because they'll look kind of squatty. I've never ever had, and I've done 100 wedding paintings, more than 100, never ever had a bride and groom come back and say, well, I think you made us a little, no, I've had grooms joke about it and say, you made me look good there, which is true, and that's okay for the groom. But I've never had anybody complain, say, well, you made me look a little too thin and too tall. And again, so it's a balance. Anyway, all that is to say, their heads have grown over the last couple of days, which has actually helped me a little bit to make the proportions. All right, so let's get to work. I am not by any means committing myself to, and I'm going to cover up her face with my phone, partly just so I can get his face is so talk about, I mean, I'm using, do you see? I'm not, by the way, I'm not doing any tracing, projecting, gridding. I did a real fast grid on Saturday night at the wedding live to get them close. But a grid really does not accomplish the whole thing. Excuse me, itchy nose again. There's something about starting broadcasting that makes my nose itch. All right, but here you see me using, you know, every trick at my disposal. Put my photograph. This quality of this photograph, of course, is 100 times better than the printout. The printout's just there. All right, let's get enough talking. Let's get started. First of all, I'm going to lengthen his nose. And again, yeah, we've joked here quite a bit already about what I call tongue painting. Okay, and there was I made a note here about his nostril. I had a sense that his nostril needed to be corrected a little bit. That's a very subtle change that I just made. You know, 1/100 of an inch more length on his nose. All right, now for the big one. His entire mouth needs to move down. Now, first of all, I can be all upset, as I mildly am. I am mildly upset. Say, oh, shaka-raka-raka. But it would be so much worse if I didn't notice. So a little bit of consolation, yay. At least I caught it through one way or the other, by hook or by crook, so to speak. At least I caught my mistake. So, whew, yay, 3 cheers for catching what needs to happen. I went through this the other day, but let me do it again real briefly. His mouth looks pretty good. It's just in the wrong place. It needs to go down about a 32nd of an inch. That's a rough estimate. I'm not sure it's 32nd. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And the right way is, if it needs to move this way, then the train is going that way. Okay, I need to move a feature down. So the train is going down. You move the engine first, then the coal car, then as many freight cars as there are, and then the caboose last. So you don't start like his mustache up here at the top line of his mustache needs to move down, and every line underneath it. But if you start at the top, that line crashes into the next and next and next and next, and it doesn't work. So you start at the bottom. In other words, again, using the train analogy, you move the engine first. So the very first line, which I've already done, is his little soul patch, goatee thing, beard under his bottom lip. I moved that down already. Now I'm going to move the line between, see the dark brown soul patch and the light pink of his lip, that line, now that needs to move down. Then the next thing I'll move is the dark line between his two lips. It will move down, and so on. Does that make sense? The point I'm trying to make is, especially again for any of you who are trying to do portraiture, and when you discover like, oh, rats, I've rendered, you know, the feature especially if you've rendered it perfectly, your work, your labor, the work you did to get it perfect is not wasted. It's one of the things I want to convey. Okay, so don't despair too much. It is a bummer if to go, oh man, I messed up. I need to move that whole. In fact, later on, I'm going to move this eye up. So I have to do that twice on his face. Mouth needs to go down. This eye needs to go up. And the good news is it's not as bad as you might first think. Again, because if you follow this train analogy, because I'm not going to, I don't have to redraw the entire mouth. All I have to do is very mechanically move one line at a time, starting at the bottom and moving up, but through the feature, move every part of it down. Again, I'm saying about a 32nd or 64th of an inch. Okay, so that wasn't very hard, was it? I just moved his bottom lip. Now the way it is right now, his bottom lip is too fat. Easy. Ooh, great comment there. Thinker888 says, hello from Ridgefield. Hello, Thinker. Do you keep a numbered list telling you what each blue number means? Are you relying on your memory, or do you just recompare the picture versus where? Yeah. Okay, it's all of the above. First of all, they're all numbered. So that's the list, is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I have a code. If it needs to move toward the number, I just put the number there. If it needs to move away from it, I put an arrow. So that my numbers are telling me, usually, not ever, always, but most of the time, honestly, what happens is once I look at it, I've got it demarcated, like this is 1A, move his mouth down, and then, well, see, I have it marked right here, move it down. But even if I didn't do that, I would look at it and go, oh yeah, that's right. So it'd be my memory. To answer your question, yes, it would be mostly just a memory thing. It's easy to remember. Plus, I'm always comparing. I don't just take this, my notes as pure gospel, if you will. I don't just believe my notes. Does that make sense? I look at my notes, and then I look at the photograph and ask myself whether I agree with my former assessment. And sometimes I don't. Isn't that funny? So sometimes, even after drawing all the notes on third opinion, I go, nah, I don't think so. I think it's okay, or whatever. Does that make sense? Because I'm always going back to the original reference. But this is not one of this is one of those times where I do think my analysis is correct, or my correction is, my notes are correct. The mouth needs to come down. So I'm moving the dark line between his upper and lower lip. I'm moving them down. Now he looks really strange. And the top lip, of course, as usual, is much darker than his bottom lip, because the light is almost always coming from above, right? So you all know that. Unless it's a dramatic underlit, bottom lit face, which is dramatic. That's how kids make, scary monster face with a flashlight. Put the flashlight underneath their face and shine up. Barring that, the top lip is always darker than the bottom lip. So now he looks like a different person. It looks like a person. There's some people whose top lip would be that shape. But this groom's name is Brent. It doesn't look like Brent, however. So I'll keep working. Again, one of the points I want to make, and I make this to remind myself of this too, because it's not that difficult. Let me bring you in real close again. Forgive me the earthquake ride. Now, right there, do you see this part of his lip? Right here, you can see the earlier erroneous light mark and then the new corrected light mark. Whoops, sorry. Well, I'm going to get you there eventually. Okay, do you see that? So my point is, it's not that hard. It's a very mechanical process. I don't have to reinvent the wheel is a good analogy at this point. And I say that partly to encourage myself, because when you discover you've made a mistake like this, you go, oh no, it took me an hour to get that mouth right the first time. The good news is it's not going to take you an hour to fix it. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 at the most. And as you know, 10 or 15 minutes in the world of portraiture is not very much time. That's pretty quick. All right? Because especially if you've done a good job, where it does take a while is if the feature is not perfected or not nailed down. If you haven't done it well yet, then of course it's going to take a while. But it would, So the more accurately you rendered it in the wrong place, the easier it's going to be to move it into the right place. All right, now I'm all the way up to the bottom. So now I'm covering up that earlier erroneous light mark. I was thinking this morning as I was crawling out of a good night's sleep, I was thinking about her, Erin in particular, because that was the last face I worked on. Why? Let me show you just for a second. Let me back up. So now it's all marked up, so you can't see it very well. But this is her face. That's how I left it on Saturday night after the wedding. Again, you could tell who it was, but there were a whole bunch of things wrong. So those are the changes I made for day before yesterday. And then some more yesterday that I did without you. Then I thought maybe I was all done. Yay, maybe she's perfect. But then when I did this test again, so this is a picture of my updated painting, I discovered, oh no. Up here I said, oh no, there's a whole bunch of changes, so I made them again. So I've done this process now twice, and if I need to, I'll do it 3 times. Usually 2 times is enough to get a perfect likeness, although as you guys just saw a few minutes ago, when I looked at her again while I was showing you her face, I went, oh no, is the bottom of her face too short? So I'll probably do the whole process again. That gets a little exasperating. But what asked me this question. So, smarty pants, I'm talking to myself. Would you rather not catch the mistakes? Would that make you happy? I'm talking to myself. Would you be happier if you didn't discover these minor errors? The answer is heck no. No, are you kidding? I'm glad I found these errors, because the alternative is far worse. Hang on just a second, let me change in-ear monitors. That battery's just about to die. All right, you there? I'm there. Okay, good. Let's continue. So I'm all the way up now. That didn't take very long, even while I was jabbering with you guys. All the way up to the top of his mustache, which now, again, needs to come down. Everything comes down. So this is the caboose, if you will. And then, of course, I look at the whole thing, his whole new mouth with fresh eyes, ask myself, okay, is that better? And because if it's not, I want to know it. Yeah, it is better. Got a little bit of tweaking to do, but here's what I'll probably do. Now, all of this correction technique that you see me using here is all predicated upon this notion, this idea in portrait painting that I call portrait blindness. That is that after a certain few minutes, after a certain amount of time, and it's not a long time, after a certain amount of time of looking at a portrait, at a face, you become blind to it. You don't really see your errors anymore. Oh, okay, I see. Here's what's going on. I've got a slight twist in his lips. Never mind. That's some of my inner talk that doesn't need to make any sense to you. But that word got the job done for me. There you go. That's better. This highlight is a little too high of a highlight. All right, so I'm going to leave it. So because I'm experiencing, I can feel it already, I'm experiencing literal portrait blindness just on his mouth. I've been staring at it for 10, 15 minutes, and I can't see it anymore. So I'm going to leave it and then come back to it. Now, by the way, while I'm on the subject of portrait blindness, I have indeed, I've never heard anybody else teach this, but I've discovered for me, and I think probably for most people, the best antidote, the best solution to portrait blindness. This is all one approach. The other is do several portraits all at the same time. So you work on one portrait till you're blind. That's about 15 minutes on Sally. Then you switch and you do 15 minutes on Andy. Then you leave it. Then you do 15 minutes on Bubba. Then you leave it and you do 15 minutes on Susie Q. And now I forgot my names, okay? And you go back, maybe even 5. At one point, years ago, I was doing portraits in public. And the most productive day, I did 10 portraits in one day. And I did it that way, 15 minutes on each one, because then, let's just limit it to 5. But that was my record. But after you do 5, what happens when you come back to whoever that first person was? You are seeing it with completely fresh eyes, as if you'd had a night's sleep. And then likewise, then you come back, you do it over and over and over and over again. 15 minutes each one. So there you go. But I don't have that luxury here because I've only got one portrait that I'm doing. I mean, one painting, 2 portraits. But the next best thing is right at the moment, for instance, well, let's leave his mouth. Let's leave his mouth behind and move on. I just did something there. I should probably tell you. This is a trick that I discovered this morning. I can write it in my diary. This is just a needle, a Sharpie point, an X-Acto knife that just has a round point in it, okay? After I finished her, literally finished her, I won't do it now because I've already done it. I took this and I just scribbled on her face. I've already done this, I'm not going to do it again. And it gave me just the right amount of jitter. Do you know that word? I used that word yesterday. When you're listening to music, there's just in a radio station there's static, audio static. This is like visual static, because after all this tongue painting, it's just too tight. So I did it real carefully in small areas, but I did it. So anyway, crazy, and it looked better. It looks better having done that. So that's good trick. Now that's for very small portraits. For something bigger, you'd want to use something bigger. All right, I'm almost talking too much, aren't I? Let's go on to number 1B. No, I numbered this case, which is his forehead hairline needs to be moved up. I've already moved his hairline twice, I believe. Here we go again, moving it for the third time. But can you see that it goes curves up? Oh, it doesn't really, it straightens up. But anyway, I'm not gonna quibble about the terminology. It turns up a little bit more than I have it in the portrait. So, and there's definitely a reflection of the blue sky on his skin. So it's a very grayish color there where it runs into his scalp. And forgive me, I'm over here mixing up paint. Now comparing, am I close? Yeah, close enough, okay. Just a tiny bit, and this is a hairline, so I don't want to make this too hard edge. And then yeah, I cut into his temple just a little bit. That's too much. All right, that's now number 2 on my, where is it? Oh yeah, this part of his face. And again, yes, this is tongue painting to the max, which I usually rail against. And if I was as good as John Singer Sargent, well, as we talked about the other day, John Singer Sargent would probably refuse to do a portrait this big. But even if he did, it would be much better than mine. But until I'm as good as him, I'll just have to do the best I can with what I've got. Number 3, I say here that the bottom of his glasses, oh, this is not a happy change. I'm going to use a brush here as a maul stick. The bottom of his glasses here needs to be raised up. I say it's not a happy change because it's a little more dramatic, because I actually need to scratch off a little bit of the previous paint. If there's any impasto, if there's any built up color when you're making these kinds of changes, then you do need to scrape. And I keep telling you about this curved blade. A straight blade will not do. A straight blade will cut into the canvas, of course, so you can't have that. So it needs to be get yourself an X-Acto note. Sometimes when I'm out painting, I always have a pocket knife in my pocket, unless I've flown on cross country. So this has a curved blade. This will do as well. Not almost as well, I should say. All right, so let's redraw this. His glasses come down a little too far. Now all this is a little something, because I know I'm actually going to take this eye and raise the whole thing up a little bit. So I can't compare at this moment. I can't compare these glasses to that eyeball, because the eyeball is going to be raised up in just a minute. All right, that's pretty good. I have here, I'm going to try to get away with this. This is a Winsor Newton Series 7 Triple Aught. And not only is that a very small brush, but it's an old Triple Aught, which means that the hairs, the bristles, are quite worn down. And so it's even smaller than a Triple Aught. And I'm putting on my 2 pairs of glasses at the same time. So that I can do this tiny little hairline of reflection in his glasses here. Talk about tongue painting. I'm assuming if there's any newcomers here, what are you talking about tongue painting? Okay, just real quick. This is what it means. See, first of all, you hold the brush like this, in the death control grip. Yeah, just like I'm doing. Hike up, and you stick out your tongue. Okay, that's why I call it tongue painting. not painting with my tongue, but sticking out my tongue while I'm doing it. And I'm not getting the white to come off the brush because I'm painting wet and wet, of course. This would be real easy if it was dry. There we go. There we go. Just that little highlight. Sweet. And by the way, this is the kind of thing that after doing hyper tongue painting, it is the kind of thing where I'm likely to come in and scratch with a needle to alleviate some of that over tightness. Okay, 3, that's number 4. Oh yeah. I'm afraid I'm going to just be boring you guys to tears, which won't happen in YouTube because you just leave me. No danger of boring you. But I'm inviting you to jump ship by just being so boring. So his glasses, what do you call the arm? What do you call it? Anyway, I'm not an expert on the anatomy of eyeglasses. Whatever this thing is that goes back to his ear. Was too fat. Even that matters. Doggone it, you even have to get stuff like that right. Are you kidding? You have to get his glasses right? Yep, you have to get his glasses right. Probably I should have scraped first. A little bit of impasto there. It's interfering with the illusion. Let me talk to you for a minute about the satisfaction that comes from doing a good job at anything in the world. That's pretty obvious, right? It seems like not infrequently I get comments, especially like on my one pen and ink video that has gone viral. It has over 3 million views. I call it Pen and Ink Master's Edition. Many of you, that's how you found me. And I've gotten a lot of comments over the years like, oh man, that's way too much work. I'd never do that. That's stupid. That's, you know. Every time I get a comment like that, I go, ka-ching. That's a cash register sound, because that's the sound of job security. What is it that makes me a fairly successful, I'll say that one, makes me a fairly successful artist when many people are not as successful? The answer is hard work. And the kind of thing I'm doing right now. What is it that separates me from some people? And there's some, of course, that are way better than I am. And I want to be better than I am. But what is it? The big separation is hard work. But after the hard work is done, or as the hard work is being done, what comes with that? What comes with that hard work, as you know, is a great sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. In fact, I was reading just the other day. Here's a funny trivia question. I don't want any of you guys freaking out. But I was reading, and I stumbled on the very first sermon, if you will. Now, you could also call it a counseling session if you'd rather. You could call it life coach if you want. But the very first sermon ever preached was God speaking to Abel. Abel is downcast. And God comes and says, hey, why are you downcast? And he said, if you do well, one of the translations says, if you do well, your countenance will be lifted up. It just struck me that all of these stories, and we're not even going to get into whether they're literal or not. It doesn't matter. They are Jordan Peterson uses the term a lot. They are archetypical, archetypes. These ancient stories, the ancient Hebrew scriptures, are archetypes for truths and realities. And that struck me that, like, here's a universal life principle. If you do well, your countenance will be lifted up. And it kind of made me chuckle, because I went, yeah, that's right. If I do a good job, when I do a good job, at the end of the day, like, I was pretty proud of this face. You would be too, probably, most of you, right? Unless you're better than me, then you wouldn't. But if you're better than me, you're not watching my videos, right, as I say. So I'm pretty proud of that. I'll be even more proud of it after I fix it one more time. But what a powerful universal principle. If you do a good job, you'll be happy. First counseling session in the human race. Archetypical sense, if you will. If you do a good job, you'll be happy. That is one of the tragic downsides of 20th century art. And by the way, I'm reading at the moment. I'm reading a book. The name of it's "What Are You Looking At?" What are you looking at? And it's written by the president. I don't know what his title was. Executive director, whatever. Director of the Tate Modern Museum which is the English equivalent of, like, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, in America. The English equivalent of, by the way, I just slipped back. Now that I've got fresher eyes, I just decided to go back and work on this mouth again for just a few minutes. So this book called "What Are You Looking At?", which is an apologetic for what most people call modern art, modern contemporary 20th century art. So as you may imagine, I disagree with it quite, not just strongly. I will contend I disagree with it intelligently. I'm reading it, reading his points, and there are reasons. I have reasons for disagreeing, but not just because I'm ornery, or because I think he's dumb or evil or anything like that. No. But he reiterates emphatically that ever since Marcel Duchamp, who presented, a urinal as a piece of art, the world has shifted, and he's correct. The world did indeed shift. And he says now that skill and craftsmanship is no longer an issue in art. And of course, he's correct. He is absolutely correct. In the world of contemporary, okay, hang on just a second. I need to count. That was number 3. That was number 4, was his glasses. Number 5, oh yeah, I think I need to shave a tiny bit off part of his cheek here. All right. So according to the purveyors, the controllers, the gatekeepers of the art establishment in the 20th century, modern art world, craftsmanship is not important. And he is correct. Absolutely, he's correct in that world. The problem is, and here's where I'm going to, in a sense, pull rank, if you will. And how can I disagree with that? No, he is correct in the art establishment. Artistic craftsmanship and skill, which of course is what you see me modeling all the time. Craftsmanship and skill is not a value. Now I say I'm going to pull rank. How am I going to say this? As someone who has spent a good portion of his life involved in trying to help other people make their lives better, you could say have been a professional counselor of sorts. I'm speaking a little bit in code because I just don't want to send some of you covering your ears and screaming because you hear hints of religiosity. So I'm trying not to. I'm not religious, but anyway. Never mind. As someone who cares about people's souls, one of the things I know is that if you do well, your countenance will be lifted up. Ancient, archetypical wisdom. If you do a good job, you'll be happy with yourself. And this is, in fact, one of my indictments against the 20th century art establishment, the quote-unquote modern art world. This is one of my indictments against them. It is not a mistake. It is not an accident. It is not coincidental that many of the luminaries of the modern art world died of suicide at a young age. Michael Basquiat, good example. You could say, well, he didn't die of suicide. He died of a drug overdose. I go, I rest my case. I'm sorry. 6, hang on. That was number 4, 5, number 6. Where is it? Oh, nostril, already did that. 7. Oh, yeah, okay. All the way down here, the bottom of his beard. Yeah, let me repeat that. That is, in fact, yes, one of the indictments that I hold. And that's why I do not want young people, if anybody young, if you have the influence over any young person and they're thinking of going away, I'm using my words very carefully here, if they're artistically gifted and they're thinking about going to the university to major in art, I would do everything in my power to stop that. I would do everything in my power, so to speak. I would do everything in my power to talk a young person out of attending any university in the Western world to major in art. And yes, if every university art department in the Western world were to disappear because of my counsel, I would celebrate. Now, yeah, because it's anyway, I could go on and on. I've got, like I said, 400 pages of a book is already dedicated. Now let me move on. Number 8. Let me keep painting while I talk. Why is that? Because of the art establishment, which is defined by, outlined, or the three-legged stool of the art establishment is the universities, the municipal museums, like in our state, it's the North Carolina Art Museum, and the municipal art associations, like United Arts Council, and in our city, like the City of Raleigh Arts Commission. Those things. There's one in your town too, or in your city. They are all defenders of the art establishment, and they march in lockstep philosophically with each other. And they agree with this book that I'm reading, that art skill. Now, let me, since I've gotten this far in, well, wait a minute, aren't those people like Picasso? Was he, I'm not even going to ask, was he a good artist? I'm going to say, did he exhibit skill? And the answer is yes, megatons of skill, but it was not artistic skill. Picasso was a pretty good artist, and some of you are going to gasp and gag and say, what are you talking about? He's a brilliant artist. Yeah, whatever. No, And some of you are saying, no, because look, when he was a kid, when he was a young person, he did this brilliant artwork. And I would say, yeah, I was that good. Okay, so I know that sounds horrible to some of you because you think he's a god. And here I'm dethroning his deity. But he did have tremendous skill. Listen to me, but it was not artistic skill. I mean, he had artistic skill, but he had a skill set that was bigger than his art skill, and it was socio-political skill, personality skill. So that's what, Jasper Johns, Jeff Koons, Damien Hirst, all of them, the whole bunch of them, Tracy Emmons, all these names. If you're in the art world, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Let's go back a little bit further. Jackson Pollock, Andy Warhol, Willem de Kooning, on and on and on and on and on and on and on. They had tremendous skill, but listen to me carefully. It was socio-political skill. That is to say, they had personality skill. That's why they could pull it off. And that is, indeed is the skill that is needed to excel as a contemporary artist. Is personality, it's socio-political skills. I use the two terms interchangeably. The tragedy is, by exercising that particular kind of skill, I'm going to use another word to be a little bit more descriptive. It's called smartass skill. And when you exercise that particular kind of skill, it does not build up your soul. In fact, I believe it does. It's the kind of thing when you have a junior high child, boy, I'm thinking in particular, living in your house. It's the very personality traits that you're trying to, I'm using the term beat, not literally, but that is what you're trying to beat out of him, is those smart-ass traits, which will not serve him well in life. What is it that does, in fact, build up your soul? And I've already answered that. And the answer is quoting God's first sermon to the human race in the person of Cain. If you do well, your countenance will be lifted up. If you do excellence, you'll be happy. And I am a firm believer in that. When I finish these two faces, let alone the whole painting, it will do much. That's why Vincent in Quebec keeps accusing me of being arrogant. Because I'm going to be, in a sense, not shy about celebrating my accomplishments. Say, wow, I love it. This is so fun. Stuff like that. And I enjoy Vincent's jabs. But I wish that everybody could experience what I experience. I do. I want my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren to be people of character, and character is expressed in not only doing good as doing righteous, doing good, but doing excellence. Yeah. So that's one thing that I have that every modern artist on the planet does not have. The satisfaction of excellence. Because what they're modeling is a smart-ass personality skill, which in fact does damage to the wearer, the bearer. It does not build up their character. All right, number 10, number 11. Oh, this entire ear needs to be moved back. That is a bummer. Now let me take a fresh look at that and see if I'm right. I am. Doggone it. His whole ear needs to be moved back. So here we go again. choo-choo train this time. The train's moving that way. But before I can start that, I have to scrape off because there's some impasto here. Some thick paint. Mostly the light colors are thick. Oh, I can't wait to read some of you guys' chat or your comments about what I just said. Just, and again, not to be too defensive, but these are things that I've studied, reflected upon for literally for decades. So it's not just something the way I'm expressing it right now is just off the cuff and perhaps in an unguarded manner. That's very possible. But the concepts themselves I've been chasing down for a good long time. I just discovered something. Both of his eyes need to be raised up. Well, doggone it. Now, the eyes are, because they're in shadow, they're actually not going to be as difficult as this ear. Let's get started on the ear. I'm reading a comment. Thinker says, I'm not sure if it's because of the streaming, but it looks like the value of the photo around the eyes and from the nose down is darker than the painting. It is slightly. It is. You're exactly right. It is. And I'm going to try to make some of that correction here. I don't know if you were with me a couple days ago when I was working on her details. It wasn't till after I got... Thanks for saying that, by the way, because it helps me reinforce what I'm seeing. But it wasn't until I got her features all in the right place that I kind of then went back with a broad brush and corrected her color. The color of her skin now is quite good, I think. And he's not quite there. I think you're exactly correct. Whew. All right. Ear time. Ear moving up slightly. This is, I would say, about a 32nd of an inch. Maybe a little more. Maybe halfway to that and a 16th. That would be 3/64ths. if you want to get technical about it, which I don't want to do. I think this is one of those times I'm going to draw this first in light, the light bits, and then come back and do the dark, and then come back and do the light again. I think it's going to have to be a 3-step process. The rule is darks first, lights last, and that is a rule almost always worth following. Almost always. But it can't be done this time in 2 steps. It has to be, I'm going to have to divide it into 3. In other words, light, dark, light is, I think, what I'm going to have to do. All right, so that was a long rant, wasn't it? I feel very, very strongly about that. My heart goes out to modern artists, young people. Let me go and tie up a loose end. I said if some young person in your life is gifted with art and they're thinking of going and majoring art in the university, I'm screaming, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. They will ruin you. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Okay, so let me make an addendum to that. What should you do if you have a young person in your life who wants to study art? The answer is attend an atelier. Now, unless they want to teach art in public school, so to speak, then they can go to the university. But I'm talking about people who want to be artists. Forgive me, I'm way over here mixing up some red paint for his ear. Attend an atelier. There are a few universities in the country with art departments. And let me soften my, okay, I said any art department. Don't attend any major university. Okay, I'm going to modify that slightly. Actually, there are very few that do have professors that are good. And the biggest exception to this is, I forget the name of it, San Francisco Art Academy, University Art Academy of San Francisco or something. Maybe it's, I don't know if it's university or college, but if you just Google that, San Francisco Academy Art College. It's like too many words, is what I remember. It's like, that's a strange name. That is a huge exception to this. There's also in Los Angeles or Irvine? No, somewhere. Lutheran University. I know there's one in Irvine, but I'm not sure that's the one. There's a Lutheran college in the Los Angeles area that teaches traditional good painting. And then now here's a funny one. There's two others. One is Liberty University, and some of you are going to say, well, yeah, you're a Christian, you would say that. The irony is, here's funny, and I'm airing our dirty laundry too much in front of people that don't need to have it aired in front of them, but there's a lot at Liberty that doesn't make me terribly comfortable. I don't want to get into that, but I'll just let that say that's the case. There's a lot that I'm not terribly comfortable with. Doesn't matter. Who am I? Doesn't matter. I'm not their judge. Neither are you. Ironically, however, because of their conservative, and in fact it is their conservatism, so to speak, that is some of the reasons I would quibble with them. Except in their art department. In that regard, it serves them well. So there's an irony. So Liberty University, and I do happen to know you don't have to be a Christian to go there. So if you have an art student who wants to learn to be a good artist, that's an option. I guess that's all. I'm sure there are others, but I don't know of them. You just basically look at the work produced by the professors, and if they are excellent painters, then trust your eyeballs. I don't mean if they're excellent in the modern art sense of the word. That's what most of them are, which means they can't paint their way out of a paper sack. In my book, I outline the process, by the way, that an art student goes through an indoctrination process if they decide to major in art. In their first couple of semesters as an art student, they will actually play act. The department, for the most part, masquerades as a real art department. They'll do figure drawing, nude figure drawing. They'll talk about human anatomy. They'll act as though they are doing real art for the first couple of semesters. Two-dimensional design, three-dimensional design. They'll talk the basics. They'll do art history. But very shortly thereafter, the real guns come out, and you begin to find out what the professors really want. And the answer is the stuff, so to speak, that you wasted your time doing in the first 2 semesters or 1 semester, figure drawing, two-dimensional design, three-dimensional design. No, that's not what matters. What really matters is the socio-political, philosophical sermons that you're going to preach with your paintings. That's what really matters. I'm overstating the case, but generally speaking, that's the truth of the matter. And again, all the art majors who are hearing this are going, yep. That's exactly right. So again, I'm reading this book because it's giving me, I always want to hear what the opposition has to say on any subject. And I don't disagree because I'm disagreeable. I disagree if I have a valid alternative viewpoint. In the book I'm reading right now, called What Are You Looking At? I forget the author's name, but he's the executive director of the Tate Modern in London. He says unequivocally, and repeatedly that the goal of art now, since the middle of the 20th century, early 20th century actually, the goal of art is to communicate. And I maintain, there's the rub. That's exactly where art goes off the rails. When it is perceived as a communicative, didactic medium. As soon as it turns into didacticism, it ceases to be art. And I could talk about that for the next hour and a half straight, but I don't want to. So there, I'm just going to leave it. But that is precisely where it goes off the rails. After all, art is communication, they say. And I go, after all, that's exactly where you and I part company. My definition of art, I will go this way. I'll go this far with it. My definition of art is very deep, very deep. Take a deep breath and listen to this. You're going to have to have your philosophical brain on. I'm being facetious here. It's very, very, very deep. I'm being facetious. My definition of art is this. You've heard it before if you've been here long. It's stuff that's made to look at. Not only that, my definition of good art is stuff that's made to look at that people enjoy looking at. Now, I recognize that as a, what's the word, a circular, there's a name for that. I'm forgetting what it is, but be that as it may. So I'm being a little bit of a smart ass when I say that, but that gets us going in the right direction. The next statements, the statements that follow that are as authentic content. So, good art is art that is stuff that's made to look at that people enjoy looking at. Now, it turns out there are objective, in my opinion, objective descriptors, analysis, reasons, explanations for why people enjoy looking at various pieces of art. It's not a mystery. By the way, the old adage, an adage is an oft-repeated saying, right? The old adage that beauty is in the eye of the beholder is just that. It's a truism that isn't exactly true. It has hints of truth about it, but it's not absolutely true. All right, where I am, number 11, number 12, number 13. All right, I'm finally down to the last one here, which is to raise up, first of all, this eye, and then secondly, that eye. Now I'm looking now at the photograph, and doggone, how could I miss that? Part of the answer, by the way, this is what I woke up thinking this morning. How could I miss these things? The answer is I had to get everything else to a certain level of perfection, to a certain level of accuracy, in a sense, like clear out the bushes so that I can see other trees that need to be moved. That was talking about a mixed metaphor there. But why can't I do it all at once? I don't know. If I was brilliant, if I was smarter, if I was John Singer Sargent, I could do it all at once. And doggone for that, not being John Singer Sargent yet, is really irritating. I'm being a little bit facetious because I do happen to know that professional portrait painters very often give themselves quite a bit of time to finish their portraits. A matter of weeks. This portrait will not take weeks. I started on Saturday. Right now it's Thursday, and there were a number of days in between where I didn't work on it, right? So, but I do wish I was better. There's no question. I do wish I were better at it. I look forward to taking some lessons actually here in the near future, and I'll let you know about that as it becomes more confirmed. I'm very excited about it though, and I'll no doubt tell you everything I learned. I'm going to get another small brush out. I'm finding this particular operation of moving his eye up actually to be quite simple, quite a simple operation, because his eye is a fairly simple shape. It's in shade. It's very muted, so there's not a lot of intricate subtleties. So it's pretty cut and dried, not too difficult at all, compared to like moving his mouth or moving his ear. They were both considerably more difficult. Picking up this tiny, tiny, tiny little brush again for a highlight in his eyeball. Now there's a there's a mark right there that needs some jitter added to it. I'm going to do this jitter rather carefully. There we go. Just a little bit of noise, a little bit of dissonance on that marks. Much better, much better. Now moving his bottom eyelid up at the moment. All right. And then nearly finished, moving his eye up. Now looking for some dark flesh tone to move his, needs to be redder than that, redder and darker. Moving the flesh of his bottom eyelid up a little bit. And that's okay, but it's too, needs some jitter, needs some messing up. I'll come back and do that later in a minute. Let's go ahead and get the crease under his eye also moves up. Last major piece to move up. And then again, erasing, so to speak, the earlier crease, raising it up. All right. At first glance, at least, add a little bit of noise in there. By the way, I'm kind of excited about this discovery here. This using that needle to create jitter. Been calling it today. That's a really good word for it, I think. I'm excited about that discovery. I need to add that to my travel kit. And more jitter up here. And by adding this jitter, I'm actually increasing the realism. I know I kind of overpronounced that word, didn't I? I'm actually increasing the realism of the painting, not decreasing it. The jitter, now it makes it look a little bit more like a photograph, which does not always translate into realism. But in this case, it does. It's more. If I left it the way it was, it almost has a cartoony look. That's a good description. Okay, why am I adding jitter to my painting? The answer is because without it, it looks. The edges are too sharp and crisp, and it just looks a little bit cartoony. There. Does that make sense? Now, shouldn't I be able to do this with a brush? Of course. So if I was a better painter, could I do it better? Of course. If I was a better painter, I could do everything better. That goes without saying. But what happens is I'm trying to be accurate, and with my strokes, of course, with my marks, with my brushes. And so in the course of being accurate, I also end up being overly edgy or precise. Does that make sense? And that's because I'm not as good as John Singer Sargent yet. This is my John Singer Sargent comparison day. Okay? And everybody out there who is as good as John Singer Sargent, that's a joke. That's an inside joke for all you people who don't know who John Singer Sargent is. Probably, some people would say without question, the greatest portrait painter America's ever produced. America, okay, not the greatest ever, but the greatest American portrait painter ever. John Singer Sargent. And what makes him great is the fact that he was able to achieve, you know, realism, a good portrait with loose, big, energetic brushstrokes. Not what I'm doing right now. Okay? So I don't feel too embarrassed about not being as good as John Singer Sargent, because neither are you. So to speak, whoever I'm talking to, you know, nobody else is either. So, by the way, the very first portrait class I ever took, 9 hours, was with Daniel Green. This is, man, a long time ago, 10, 12 years ago. You know, pretty good portrait painter. Sometimes, I'm letting out too much information here, but sometimes, every once in a while, I talk about the big dogs. Everett Kinsler, Nelson Shanks, Daniel Green, you know, a whole bunch of other people whose names I don't remember. The big dogs, in America anyway, right now. You can go to oil painter, you can go to American Portrait Society and Oil Painters of America, either one of them, both of those, to see portrait painters that are just so disgustingly good, it makes you disgusted. I'm being facetious, of course. Or it makes you inspired, either whichever way you want to go. I should probably see how this battery's doing. It's been on for a long time. We're okay. Not too bad. Way to go, little Android. Hang in there. All right. That makes me happier. Now, his bottom lip is still a little bit too pronounced. I think it's going too far that way. I can lower his nose a little bit. Okay, now hang on just a second. That teaching moment just erupted. And I think I could do this without my magic glasses. Very, very often in portraiture, everything on a face affects everything else on a face. One of the things I think you learn very early in portrait painting is that what you thought was the problem is not actually the problem. So I will tell you, at the risk of, I don't want anybody to feel inhibited, but many times I'll get chats when I'm doing portraits and I'll get comments, and I pay attention to every single one, I do. But I also have this caveat inside my mind going, yeah, I'll get comments like, well, don't you think eye, nose, ear, nose, mouth, something neat is a little off? And I inside I go, yep, it's possible. But I also go, yep, but just because you and I think that at the moment, that may in fact not be the real culprit, the real issue. So what just happened to me just now is, now that I've raised, moved his mouth, moved his eye, and moved a whole bunch of other things, I've gone, oh, you know what? I can move his lengthen his nose. Yet again, I've already done it in this session. Now I'm coming back and doing it one more time. So everything you change, it changes everything else. And many times what you think is the problem, if you will, if you want to call it a problem, what you think is wrong is actually not what you think. It's something else. It's just being affected. It's like dominoes. You fix one thing and then you discover, oh, now this needs fixing. So when you're evaluating or judging your own portraits, you always hold all of your judgments in abeyance. You hold them, say, yeah, well, it might be this. I'm going to try it. I'm going to look at it. Now, it's real obvious to me. I'm quite happy with that eye raised up, so much better. Now, it's so obvious to me that this eye needs to be raised up as well. And again, that is not a daunting task. Moving his mouth and moving his ear was the hardest. Moving those is quite simple. By the way, speaking of jitter, let's go back to this ear for a minute. I'm just basically messing up that ear, that perfect ear that I painted. Now, of course it goes without saying, if I over mess up something, right? You can come and touch it up a tiny bit. Of course. Does that make sense? That's slightly better now, having added the noise to his ear. Okay, let's tackle. I'm procrastinating now. Let's tackle this eyeball. Not going to be not eyeball. Entire eye structure needs to be raised up. Not terribly difficult, I don't think. I'm trying to decide whether to wear my magic X-ray glasses or not. All right. Hello, welcome back. Sorry about that. Here I am with my super magical X-ray glasses back on. And I keep thinking I'm done. By the way, my camera died a while ago because it had come, unbeknownst to me, it had come unplugged from its electrical source, so the battery ran down. It's always something. Sorry about that. And I keep thinking I'm finished with this, with their faces, and then something else catches my eye. So I'm very close to finished. I did go back and work on her face, by the way, and instead of moving her mouth and lengthening, I back to that old thing I was talking about. And many times, what you think is wrong is not actually what's wrong. So I think my first impulse about her face, when this happened. I was showing you all my finished face, her finished face, and as I was doing it, I went, wait a minute, something's wrong. And there still may be something wrong. Don't get me wrong, there still might be something wrong. But as I was showing you, I thought, wait a minute, the bottom of her face isn't long enough. Upon further reflection, I decided that in fact her eye, this eye needed to be raised up. So I've raised it up again for the third time. I've raised her eye 3 times now. But I think that was more so my conundrum. Actually, contrary to how it sounds, it wasn't that bad. And so I'm going to let it rest. I was certainly expecting that at the end of this go-round on the faces that I would be completely satisfied. But alas, I'm not positive that everything is perfectly correct. So I'm going to do this one more time. So let me let you watch me a little bit here in operation. So this is my old phone. Last time I went to year and a half ago, when I went to turn in this phone, it's cracked on the back, so they wouldn't take it as a trade-in. So I was stuck keeping the phone. I had no idea what a blessing, what a boon. Do you like that word, boon? it was going to end up being. So there. So I've just taken a picture of her. I'm more confident in her than I am in him. Now, I don't know if you can, I think you can see this. Let me zoom in a little bit more. So I want to show you, if you haven't seen this before. So this app right here, it's called Photo Collage. Okay, open it. All right, and let's start with her face. There we go. So that's her. She's just about the right size. And then next to that, I put the photograph of her. It should be, I've got a whole bunch of copies of it. There we go. So make them both the same size, keep them both level. Those are some little tricks you have to work with. Now, many times, simply by getting to this point right here, I will see inconsistencies or errors, things that need to be fixed. As I do right now. Okay, so I have a hint already that changes are going to be needed to be made. Darn. Okay, so I saved that. For years, so that's saved to my gallery. Now I open my gallery. Back out of this. Go to Photo Collage. There it is. Come on. So there's the collage I just made, right? I'm going to edit it in my photo. Everybody that's got a smartphone can do this. Okay, so I've just flopped it. So that's the mirror image. I'm going to save that. Now let's go back to the Photo Collage app. Throw out this one. Yes. And change now to the horizontal. And up here, I'm going to put, wait a minute. Why isn't this showing up first? Forgive me, I have to go back to, oh, I didn't save it, sorry. Okay, so I saved it now in Gallery. Now let's go back to Photo Collage. There we go. So now, you understand, this right here, this is the mirror image of my painting and the mirror image of the photograph. So just by looking at those, I already see some inconsistencies. Darn, I thought I was done. Whew. But better to discover that it's not perfect than to proceed under the illusion that you're finished, right? Save that. So when I'm working out in the field, so to speak, when I'm working at a wedding, this is what I have to go from. So I just make mental notes, one at a time, changes that need to be made to this. And alas, I already see several. So this is a lovely painting of a lovely young lady, unfortunately. And you can tell that it's Erin. That's easy. But it's not perfect Erin. Darn. So it needs to be fixed yet again. Now, because I'm working in my studio here at home, I'm going to actually send this, go back, let's share this to my email. So it'll be on my computer behind me. And Daniel Nelson Art at gmail.com, in case you want to know my address. And I'm going to call this Erin, E-R-I-N, send. So now I can do this trick that you see me do so many times. So just in case you ever missed, again, how's that done? So that's how these are made, right? This is the old first, second, and now I'm going to be doing it a third time. Yeah, I thought I was finished with their faces, but I am not. I'm not completely happy. But I am going to end this broadcast right there. It's been enough of a day. Thank you for your comments. Let's see if I have any other new chats that have come in. Eliezer Gonzalez from Istanbul. Well, thank you very much, Eliezer. Thank you for joining me today. Appreciate it. Istanbul, Turkey. I think that's the first time I know of somebody from Turkey watching me. Appreciate it very much. Thank you all, you guys. If you enjoy this, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to know when I'm broadcasting. If you like it, share with your artist friends. And as I always say, if you don't like it, let's keep that between you and me. All right. Something's wrong with my brain. I laugh at my same jokes all the time. I think technically that might be what you call a poor sense of humor. It's like a 6-year-old who finds a funny joke and then says it over and over and over. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll be back. I don't know. Maybe today, maybe not. Maybe tomorrow. Thanks. Bye-bye.